Good morning, students. Welcome back to online session. In our previous session, we have seen the second important component of your computer, that is software. So we defined the software as a virtual component. Virtual in the sense it will exist, but we cannot sense it, we cannot touch it, we cannot feel it. Unlike your physical components, your hardware, where we can touch and feel the hardware components, that kind of thing we can't do with this software. So again, we discussed software as a collection of programs, where we said every program in turn is a collection of instructions. And when we defined these instructions, we said instruction is nothing but it's an order or it's a command to the computer. It's a command or order to get a specific job done by the computer, isn't it? Instruction, why we are using instructions, why we are giving instructions to the computer in order to in order to achieve a particular job by the computer. That is the sole responsibility of giving instructions to the computer, isn't it? So quickly, we defined the software as a collection of programs, and we defined the program as a collection of instructions. Okay, so the categorization, the broad categorization, when we have seen between inside this software, we said software is broadly categorized into two. One is system software and the other one is application software. System software, the responsibilities, we said in order to manage the computer hardware efficiently, we are using system software. Okay, not only that one, in order to access the communication channel, which is nothing but your internet, in order to access the internet connected to your computer, we are making use of the system software. And also we said we are going to have files and databases inside our computer or inside our computer hardware, and in order to access, in order to manage that files and databases, again we are making use of the system software. These are some of the responsibilities of the system software, we said. And system software, again, it is divided into three further categories. One is operating system, system support, and system development. And for each of these three, we have discussed the responsibilities as well as example softwares, isn't it? So then, coming to this application software, application software is an area, or application software is a software with which the end user, or with which the computer user is going to interact directly, isn't it? The computer user is going to interact directly with only the application programs. Okay, so almost all the times we said, okay, there is a provision, there is a flexibility that the end user can also interact directly with the system software. That provision, that flexibility also we discussed in our previous session. So again, this application software, it is in turn divided into two, isn't it? General purpose and application specific, where general purpose applications are going to have their scope in multiple domains, isn't it? Like we discussed the example of word processors. Word processors are nothing but your MS Word, MS Word or MS Excel, you can consider. So if when we are talking about MS Word, this MS Word application can be used by a lawyer, a doctor, a mechanical engineer, a civil engineer, a computer science engineer. Like in multiple domains, this particular application is having its scope. Okay, so that is the reason why we are calling MS Word as a general purpose application. Application specific also we discussed, like we said, material management system or the ledger system. Ledger system, for what purpose we are using? Only the chartered accountants they use in order to create the balance sheets, in order to forecast the future analysis. They use this ledger system, and that ledger system of no use to a doctor or of no use to a lawyer, isn't it? So in that sense, we have discussed, with the help of these examples, we have discussed how this application software can be categorized into general purpose as well as application specific. So all these things, if we quickly see in the diagram, So this diagram will give you the idea of a software and how that software is divided into two types: system software as well as application software, and system software further into operating system, system support and system development, and application software general purpose and application specific. So yeah, this is uh, when they ask you to write about the definition of a computer, and if they are giving this question for 7 marks or for a long answer question, then you have to narrate all these things: hardware components, then software components, everything you have to write in detail. And many of the times they will frame such a question from this concept. So define the term computer and elaborate on internal components of your computer. Likewise, they will frame one question. So in that case, what you have to do, you have to write all these things. First of all, you have to write the definitions of the computer, then what is hardware, what are the components inside this hardware, and how these components are categorized, like input devices, output devices, processing devices. All these things you have to write. Then further, inside input devices, uh, why we use input devices and examples, output devices and processing unit, and this memory types, storage device types. All these things you have to narrate. And till this software also you have to categorize, define and categorize, and system software and application software, and the relationship between all these software types, this also you have to write. So till this point you have to write, and it is an long answer question. If they are not framing any long answer question from this topic, definitely there is a scope that they are going to ask SAQs, short answer questions from this topic. So yeah, after this discussion, after the relationship between system and application softwares, we have to discuss about computer languages. So when we define the term software, over there itself I have given the idea of what is a programming language. Generally, in order to give instructions to the computer, or in order to uh, give your feelings, your expressions to the computer, and I mean how you want your work to be done, it has to be explained to the computer, isn't it? You have to explain this thing to the computer. Then only your computer will process that job, then only it will give the proper output, proper productivity from that instructions. So basically, in order to write a program to the computer, the basic requirement is we need a programming language. We need a programming language. So the first point, if you read over here, computer languages, to write a computer program, we need a computer language. To write a computer program, we need a computer language. So basically, how these things will be done, how these programs will be given to the computer. Is your computer going to understand whatever programs you are writing, or when your computer will understand your programs written in a particular programming language? I mean, how it is going to understand that thing, whether it is going to understand directly or indirectly, or if it is understanding directly, in which programming language it will understand directly, or if it is understanding indirectly. So when you are saying indirectly, who is going to play the mediator role over there? Indirect in the sense, we are not conveying our message directly to the computer. Instead, what we are doing, we are giving our message to some third party, and that third party is explaining that message to the computer. Or whatever instructions you want to give to the computer, instead of giving directly, what you are doing, you are taking the help of a mediator. You are taking the help of a mediator. Under what circumstances you need a mediator, and under what circumstances you can convey your message directly to the computer, all those things we have to understand in today's class. Basically, this computer languages topic cover that thing only. So basically, what are all the things we have to understand over here is programming language, then mediator program, mediator, and if you are giving directly the instructions to the computer, in what language we have to give. These three things we have to understand. So quickly, first of all, we understood that there is a need of a language. There is a need of a language in order to convey our message to the computer. Not only to the computer, take the real-time example. Take the real-time example. If two human beings, if they want to share their feelings, if they want to convey their feelings one to other, then there is a need of a language. There is a need of a language. And all our languages, we have vocabulary, isn't it? We have to understand that vocabulary, and depending on that vocabulary only, we people are going to communicate, isn't it? We people are going to communicate. Take the example of any two persons, okay, belonging to a native country, same country, okay. Let us say in India. In India, if two people, okay, if two people want to communicate, they can use either Hindi or English or any other native language based on their state of living. State in the sense, geographically I'm saying, not the position, okay. Geographical location. Based on their geographical location, they can use any of the language in order to communicate, okay. So suppose if two persons, two different persons, one person belonging to India and the other person belonging to Germany, okay. So let us assume that India, the person who is living in India, he knows uh, only English as well as Hindi. Or let us understand, the person who is living in India, he knows only Hindi, and the person who is living in Germany, he knows only German language. So now, take the example of these two people, okay, person from India, person from Germany. If they want to communicate, and they know only their native languages, they don't know any other language. Indian person, he knows only Hindi, and German, he knows Germany person, he knows only German language, okay. So now, uh, here there is a problem, isn't it? Can they communicate with each other? No, it is not possible, because he knows only Hindi and he knows only German language. So there can't be any communication, direct communication between them, isn't it? So that is the reason why we have to mention this term, direct term over there. Direct communication is not possible. So how we can resolve this issue, how we can solve this problem of communication between these two people, means we need a mediator. That mediator is nothing but your translator. We are having translators in the society, okay. What their role is, what their job role is, they will convert one language statements or into some other language statement, isn't it? They convert one language statements into some other language statements. This is the duty of a translator, okay. So now we need a translator over here in order to establish, or in order to make the communication possible between this Indian as well as the German, okay. So we need a translator who knows both these languages. He has to know both these languages. He has to know Hindi as well as he has to know German. Then only it is possible to establish the communication. Then only it is possible to what we call um, the communication, in order to make it, okay. So the translator, he has to know both Hindi as well as German language. So what he will do basically over there, he will take the message from the German person and he will translate that into Hindi and gives it to the Hindi person, that is a person from India. Okay, next what he will do, he will take the messages from Hindi person, that is nothing but the person from India, and translate those Hindi messages into German language, and conveys the same to the German person, okay, Germany person. So in that way the communication takes place, okay. So if any one of these two persons, either the German person knows the Hindi or either the Indian person knows Germany, will solve our issue, isn't it? We don't need, in that case, we don't need a translator. So directly, as the Indian person, he knows the German language, he can directly interact with that German person. Or if the German person knows the Hindi language, he can interact directly with the Indian person. Okay, so hopefully you understood. The first scenario, we need a translator if there is no direct communication possible. If there is direct communication possible, the requirement is either of the parties has to know their, apart from their own language, the other person language. Apart from their own language, they have to know the other person language. Either the Indian or the German has to know the other language. Then only the direct communication is possible, and there is no need of any translator in between. But if they don't know I mean, the opposition party language, if the Indian don't know the German language or the German don't know the Indian language, then we need a translator over there. So you have to understand this concept very clearly. That is the reason why I'm stressing again and again. Okay, when there is a need of a translator and when there is no need of a translator, you have to understand this one. Hopefully you understood. So quickly we go to our concept, and we see over here the computer languages have changed over the year from machine language to natural languages. Okay, from machine language to natural language. You have to understand this point as well. So over the years, what has been done means, initially when they first invented the computers, okay, when the scientists, when they first invented the computers, the only available language, there was no programming languages, there was no high level, there was no middle level, there was no symbolic languages, nothing. There was only one programming language available, and that programming language was machine language. So here the computer's language itself is the machine language. You have to remember this one. The computer's language itself is the machine language. That machine language is nothing but your binary language. Binary language. Why we have given this binary term over there means, because in the alphabet of binary language, we are having only two characters. In the alphabet of English, how many characters, how many alphabets we have? 26, isn't it? 26 characters we have in English alphabet. But whereas in binary language alphabet, we have only two characters, that is 0 and 1. 0 and 1. And whatever instructions you want to give to the computer, you have to give in terms of zeros and ones only. Binary language is having only two characters in its alphabet, that is 0 and 1. And if you want to give any of the instructions to the computer in binary language or in machine language, we also call this binary language as machine language, or machine language as binary language. These two are just the different names. Okay, the reference point is same. Whatever we are referring, that is referring to the binary language or the machine language, just the two different names. The language is same. You have to understand this one. Okay, so over here what we were discussing, yes, the computer languages have changed over the years from machine language to natural language. Initially, when the computer invention has been done, there was only one programming language, and that is machine language. And the scientists or the programmers, whoever wants to give the instructions to the computer, they have to give the instructions only in machine language, because there was no other language. Okay, so from that machine language, it is very difficult to give the instructions in machine language, because we have to frame all our instructions in zeros and ones. Okay, think of this. Suppose if you want to perform addition of two numbers, so it is a normal simple calculation, isn't it? So if you want to perform the addition of two numbers, so let us say how we perform that one. So 2 plus 3, generally in mathematics how we represent 2 plus 3, and this sign, plus sign, what it is representing over here, it is representing addition. Generally we perform addition, and mathematical addition means what? It will add this 3 to this 2 and you will get the result like this 5. Okay, you will get the result like this 5. It is a simple calculation, so basically we can do it. So if you want to do the same operation on a computer, okay, in an ancient computer, likewise we discussed the first computer, okay, the first computer. We don't go into deep into, I mean, the history of the computer, what was the first computer and then what computer came into existence and how the personal computer came into existence. All those things we will not discuss, okay, because it is not there in your curriculum and we don't want to waste much of our time on that concepts. If you have the interest, you can go and you can find out, okay. So now, if you want to perform this simple addition operation on a computer, then with machine language, because we are considering the ancient computer, the first computer, okay, the inception computer, the computer at the starting point, okay, the starting point of the history, we can say. So that on that computer, if you want to perform this addition operation, there was no other language, isn't it? There was only one available language, that is machine language. So we have to use this machine language in order to perform the this operation. So how I have to frame the instructions? First of all, what I have to do, I have to convert this 2 into binary language. So I have to convert this 2 into binary language. So 2, how we can write means 0, 1, 1. Like this we write. And addition, whatever operation you are performing, that operation also you have to convert into binary. So let us say that binary operation something like this. Okay, I'm just considering randomly. Then this 3 also you have to convert into binary. So 3, how we write means 0, 1, 1. So let us say this is 0, 1, 0 and 0, 1, 1. So like this, 0, 1, 0 is your 2 and this is your plus symbol and this is your 3, equivalent to 3. So like this, you have to give all your numeric values as well as alphabets, whatever you have, you want to give to the computer, all those things you have to convert into machine language. And then it will give the resultant value, that is 5, which will be in binary only again, which will be in binary only. 101 is the 5 equivalent. So like this you will get. So after getting the result, again what you have to do, you have to convert this into numeric form, from the binary number to normal numeric form. Like this you have to perform the addition operation. So for this simple calculation only, for this simple addition operation only, you have to perform these many steps. You have to go through these many steps. Okay, consider that you are performing a big number addition, like some 1 lakh, like this 500 plus some 2005 72, likewise a very big number. So then the problem will raise. Okay, this big number you have to first convert into binary or machine language, then this symbol also you have to convert into machine language, this also you have to convert into machine language, and then whatever result it will give now, that result also it will give in machine language only. That result also it will give in binary language only. So whatever result you are getting, that binary language result, again you have to convert into your regular numerical value, So all these are the problems associated with machine language. So you will fix this point inside your mind. Your computer will understand only the machine language. Your computer will understand only the machine language. And if you want to give your instructions in machine language, it is an hectic job. It is a problematic job, isn't it? If you want to give all your instructions in machine language, it is an hectic job. The reason, because whatever uh, formatting we use, whatever concept we use in our real time, we follow a different concept, isn't it? It is not machine language. We follow a different concept. But when it comes to computer, it will understand only the machine language. So there comes the requirement of a mediator, isn't it? Because we as humans, I will take this over here. We as humans, we have our own languages, Okay, generally what we call those languages as, we call them as natural languages. We call them as natural languages. And the computer, it will understand only the machine language. Computer will understand only the machine language. Machine language. Now you correlate this example with our Indian German example. So if the humans not understanding machine language, and if computer not understanding natural language. Computer will not understand natural language. Computer will understand what? Only machine language. Humans will not understand machine language. Humans will understand only natural languages. Natural language in the sense, what are they? Examples, our English. English is a natural language, isn't it? English, okay, and your Hindi, okay, your all native languages, all they comes under natural languages only. So we humans, we understand these type of natural languages, and your computer will understand only machine language. So there is a gap, isn't it? So how we filled that gap, or how we solved this issue in order to establish the communication? Because whatever work the human being wants to give to the computer, how he has to give, uh, isn't it? He has to express that work. He has to express that work in the form of instructions. So if he don't understand the computer language, how come the human going to give his what? Give his expressions. So there comes the problem. So to solve this problem to some extent, not fully, to some extent, the scientists, what they have done means they have developed a translator program. They have developed a translator programs. So what is the role of this translator program means? They will take the instructions from human. In what language they will take? Again, we have to discuss. So they will take, generally what they will do, they will take the instructions from human beings and convert those instructions into machine language. Convert those instructions into machine language. So now here these translator programs, again they are having some problem, some issue in them. This translator program, they are not fully translating the natural language instructions. So whatever instructions we are giving, those instructions they are not fully converting. They are not fully understanding. So I mean, the scientists, when they have developed these translator programs, what they have done means, okay, they took another mediator language like our C programming. Our C programming. So this translator, what he will understand? He will understand both machine language as well as C language. Okay. The translator program, he will understand both things. So it's better to call it as C language. So instead of C programming, we better call it as C language because it is a language. Okay. So now the translator program, it is having the capability of doing both the things. It will convert the C language into machine language as well as it will convert the machine language into C language. But it will not understand your natural languages. It will not understand your natural languages. So the scientists, to give the flexibility to the to the humans, what they have done, they have developed a separate language, a separate translator program. So that translator program, what it is doing, it is converting the C language into machine language. So now the humans, it is the responsibility of humans that they have to learn this C language. So learning machine language, it is very difficult than learning C language. So what the humans are doing now, instead of learning machine language, they are learning C language. So once they know C language, what they can do, they can write the instructions in C language and they can give those instructions to this translator program. What this translator program will do, it will convert the C language instructions into machine language instructions so that the computer will understand those machine language instructions. Hopefully you got the idea. So translator program, again, we don't have a full translator program which will convert the human language, that is nothing but natural language, into machine language. We don't have any such translator program. We have translator program which will convert the mediator languages. There are different mediator languages, not only C language. We have C++, we have Java, we have Python, okay, we have Pascal, COBOL, okay, many different languages we have in the market. So all these languages, they need translators. All these languages, they need translators. So converting the human language into computer language, it is very difficult. but converting this mediator language programs or mediator language instructions into computer language, that is nothing but machine language, it is an easy job. So that is the reason why the scientists, they have developed translator programs only to convert these mediator language programs into machine language, but not natural language programs into machine language. Their goal is to do that one only. What is the scientists' goal now? They they want to develop a programming language which should be near to natural language, which should be near to natural language, and I can say that to some extent they succeeded. To some extent they succeeded. Nowadays we have some voice command uh, computer systems, isn't it? They operate on voice commands, human being voice commands. So maybe you might have heard about this Amazon Alexa, isn't it? Amazon Alexa, what it will do, it will take the commands in natural language only. So if I say Alexa, play some good music for me, so what Alexa will do, it will start playing my favorite songs, isn't it? It will start playing my favorite songs. Alexa, play some good movie for me. If the television is connected to your Alexa, and I'm asking the Alexa to play some good movie, in the sense what it will do, it will automatically start playing my favorite movie on the television screen, isn't it? And if your home, complete home is automated, I mean the smart home, then and if you have connected all your window curtains as well as your lights, fans, all these things, if you have connected to that Alexa, then your Alexa will accept the human commands and operate all these home appliances for you, isn't it? If I say Alexa, just switch on the lights, means it will switch on the lights. Alexa, switch off the lights, means it will switch off the lights. Raise the curtains, means it will raise the curtains. Likewise, it will accept different commands from human beings in their own languages, isn't it? In their own language. But whatever we are discussing over here, we are discussing a point where the natural language evolution has not been done. In terms of computer programs, the natural language evolution has not been done. Okay, by keeping that thing in our mind, we are doing this discussion. So quickly we go to our slides and we see where we are. So we said the computer, to write a computer program, we need a computer language, and computer languages have changed over the year from machine languages to natural language, as just now we discussed. Okay, the computer will understand only the machine language, and the scientist's goal, the developer's goal is to build a programming language which should be near to natural language, Okay, so next, how this evolution has been done. Okay, we said over the years they have been evolved from machine language to natural language, and how this evolution has been done means, okay, at the time, okay, during 1940s there was only one available programming language, that is the machine language. So it was the starting point of computers, we can say. In the history, it is the starting point of computers, and there was no mediator language, and there was only one programming language available, and that is the machine language. So everything, whatever you want to give to the computer, whatever instructions you want to give, whatever commands you want to give to the computer, you have to give in machine language itself, because there is no other programming language. Okay, slowly the evolution has been done, and during 1950s they developed symbolic languages. Inside symbolic languages, we are going to use some special symbols in order to write the instructions, or in order to give the instructions, we use special symbols. Then in 1960s we got high level programming languages, and your C language is one such type. Your C language is one such programming language. Okay, your C language, or we talk about C++, your Java, your Python, all these are examples for high level languages, high level programming languages. Hope you understood this concept. During 1940s we have only machine language. 1950s we got symbolic languages, and then more evolution during 1960s we got high level programming languages. Okay, so quickly we go, and if you see the evolution simply like this. 1940s we have the machine languages, then 1950s we have symbolic languages, 1960s we got high level languages, and lastly during 1990s, okay, near to natural languages they have done the, I mean, this thing we are not discussing as part of your curriculum, but if you see the reality, in 1990s only we got voice command operated computers, okay. So nowadays if you have the Amazon Fire Stick or something, or even if your smart TV remote controls, they are coming with voice active commands, isn't it? Voice active commands. So whatever commands if you give to your smart, I mean, the smart TV, it will simply do it for you, isn't it? Even your mobile phone, okay Google we have, that is also a kind of natural language processor only, NLP only, isn't it? Natural language processor. Okay, NLP, all these concepts they will come under artificial intelligence. This NLP concept and all, they will come under artificial intelligence, and it is too early for you if I feed all this stuff. Okay, you will get confused, so don't get confused. So simply remember, in the early days of computers we were having only machine languages, then slowly symbolic languages came into existence, and finally the high level languages. And from there, I mean, till this point only we discuss over here in this C programming, and over the years the programming languages have evolved near to natural languages, near to natural languages. So I have given the example for these natural language processors, like your Alexa, your Siri in iPhone, your OK Google in Android phone, okay, your smart TV remote controls, all these things, they are NLPs only, natural language processors only. Hopefully you understood this thing. So quickly, the first type of programming language, that machine language, and we said in the early days of computers we used, okay, in the inception days of computers we used these machine languages, and the only available programming language, why we used machine language means at that time the only available programming language was the machine language. So that is the reason why we used only machine language. And the problem, as we discussed, we have to code all our instructions using either zeros or ones. That is the big problem, because we human beings, we can't frame everything using zeros and ones, isn't it? I have shown you one simple example of adding two numbers and how difficult it is, isn't it? So that is the reason why the programmers or the scientists, they always felt that there should be a way where the human beings can interact with the computer easily. So in that motivation only, we got the other programming language types. So the first programming language type, that is machine language, here we have to code everything using zeros and ones only. All you read this last statement over here, all instructions in machine language must be streams of zeros and ones. Streams in the sense sequences, okay, because internal circuitry, whatever internal, why the computer will understand machine language, that also very important question, isn't it? Because yeah, as far as the internal circuitry or internal components of your computer are concerned, they are electronic components, and all your electronic devices, they can be in any of the two states. Either they can be on state, they can be on, or they can be off. So only two states possible: on state, off state. There is no any intermediate state, isn't it? So that is the reason why your binary language is also having only two states, 0 and 1, on state, off state. Okay, so you can relate this electronic components to your normal electrical switches inside your houses. So they can be in any of the two states. Either the switch can be in on state or it can be in off state. So if the switch is on, we call that case as true case 1. We indicate with binary 1. The on state of a device we indicate with binary 1, and the off state of a device we indicate with binary 0. Okay, so the on state 1, off state 0. So if you want to store 0 inside a memory device, how we are going to store that 0 means, inside that memory device somewhere we use a particular flag or a particular switch. So that switch we put in off condition. So if you are keeping up switch in off condition, so that indicates the 0 is stored. And in order to store a 1, we have to make a particular switch on inside your circuitry. So likewise, we store zeros and ones inside your memories. Hopefully you understood. So this all these things somewhere related to your electronics department, and if a particular faculty from electronic department, if he is going to teach any subject to you, he will give you more idea on how these electrical signals going to be stored inside a memory device. Okay, so see, these devices can be in any one of the, yeah, already we discussed the off state is represented by 0 and the on state is represented by 1. This also I have explained. Okay, so this simple program, okay, it is a program written in machine language. As you can see, all are only zeros and ones, no other symbols. And imagine if I tell you to write the same program, how difficult it is, isn't it? It is very difficult. So it is just I'm using this machine language program for your demonstration purpose. Sir, do we have to remember this means? No, no need of remembering, no need of writing this program in your exams. Okay, it is just for the demonstration purpose, how the machine language programs are written. To show that one, I have taken this example over here. Hopefully you understood. How difficult it is, you have to understand. So there comes the need of a flexible solution. So in that evolution process, in that towards that motivation only, we got symbolic languages into existence. The uh, scientists, or we can say the developers, they thought that machine language is not the proper solution or feasible solution for computers to interact. So there must be a way where the programmers can interact with the computer easily. So in that motivation, or in that spirit, okay, in the year 1950, basically when this evolution has been happened means in the year 1950, Admiral Grace Hopper, she's a lady basically, she's a lady, she's a computer programmer, or we can say the first computer programmer, first lady computer programmer, Admiral Grace Hopper. She's a mathematician. She developed the concept of special programs. She only developed the translator programs. Okay. She developed the concept of a special program that converts programs into machine language. So there will be an intermediary language, and if we are going to write our program, our computer program into that intermediary language, so what her concept will do means, her, according to her concept, that intermediary language program can be converted into machine language. She has given that idea. She has given that idea. So during these days, programming languages supply mirrored machine language. Okay, machine language using special symbols or mnemonics. Okay, so whatever programming language at that time was developed, it uses special symbols and mnemonics. Okay, mnemonics in the sense it is a kind of what we call code representations for operations. Okay, it's a kind of code representation. Suppose if you want to perform the addition in that intermediary language, we call that as add, like this. This is your mnemonic. If you want to perform subtraction, sub, subtract, it is your mnemonic. Multiplication, mul, division, div. Likewise, for different operations, we have some symbolic equivalents. To perform addition, to perform subtraction, multiplication, and division, we have these symbolic equivalents. So we call them as mnemonics. Here you can see the spelling. Yeah, here, mnemonics. Okay, we call them as mnemonics. M is silent over here. So yeah, to represent the machine language instructions. So instead of writing all zeros and ones, now we can use these symbols as well as mnemonics in order to perform the um, in order to give the instructions. So let us say, suppose if you want to perform the addition, so addition of two numbers. So now what you have to do, simply put add. Okay, add. So first of all, yeah, instead inside your as we said, inside your processor we are going to have the registers, isn't it? So first of all we have to, yeah, for moving, first of, I'm just giving a simple example. Okay, move some 32, a number, into register, CPU register R1, then move another 35 into a CPU register R2. So likewise we write the instruction. So what it will, what this move instruction, it is basically an instruction, a command to the computer. What this move will do means it will move this 32 into R1 register. What this move will do, it will move this 35 into R2 register. Then add R1 plus R2, R1 plus R2, like this. So now what will happen? So like this, when you write, so yeah, the R1 content, R2 content will be added, and finally the result will be saved in accumulator. So to see the accumulator content, okay, we have different instructions. Okay, so simply the result will be saved inside accumulator, and what is accumulator and all that you will understand. Okay, so in this way we perform the operation. So this is, to some extent, it is easy, isn't it? We can remember that move will move the move the value into register, and add will add the values. So like this we can remember. So instead of following that binary code, now we can follow this mnemonics or symbols, special symbols. Okay, instead of remembering the binary language codes, now we can remember the mnemonics or special symbols. So these special symbols, as we are using special symbols, we call these type of languages as symbolic languages. In machine language, all zeros and ones. In symbolic language, instead of zeros and ones, we have the flexibility of using these mnemonics and symbols, special symbols. Okay, here also you have to remember this point. Your computer, it will not understand any symbols, any mnemonics, nothing. Again, in order to give that symbolic language program to the computer, you have to convert that symbolic language program into machine language. Why we are using this symbolic language means because we have a translator. Okay, because we have a translator which will convert this symbolic language program into what we call machine language. So we call the translator program as assembler. So here a special program, you can see over here, a special program called assembler is used, which translate the symbolic language instructions into machine language instructions. Why we are doing this means because again your computer, it will not understand the symbolic language instructions, it will understand only the machine language instructions. So there is a need to convert these symbolic language instructions into machine language, and who will do that means, who will do that job means a special program called assembler will do that job. Here you have to remember, when we are converting the symbolic languages into machine languages, we are using assembler. We are using assembler. A symbolic language program, here you can see. So to some extent it is very easy to understand, and it is very easy to remember because it is using move AB, push A1, push A2, calls, like these type of instructions it is using, and one can easily remember these kind of instructions. Another important problem with machine language I forgot to mention over here. Another important problem with this machine language is these machine languages are different from computer to computer. So if you are using a computer, let us say some A computer, let us say you are using A computer. So A computer's machine language is entirely different if you have another computer like B computer. So when you have two computers, these two computers will have their own machine languages. So in order, if you want to give a program to A computer, what you have to do, you have to follow the A computer's machine language only. And if you want to give the give your program to B computer, then again whatever program you have written for A computer's whatever program you have written in A computer's machine language, that program you can't give to B computer because your B computer will not understand that one. So here what I mean to say is machine language is different from computer to computer. If you have two computers, you have to learn two different machine languages. So that is again the problem. The reason, it is very simple. The machine language is entirely dependent on your computer's architecture, hardware architecture. Okay, so that is the reason why the machine language will differ from computer to computer, and in order to program a computer you have to learn its specific machine language. Whatever machine language it will understand, you have to learn that machine language and you have to write that machine language. So again it is also a problem. Symbolic languages, to some extent, we can say, not completely, but to some extent, we got the independency in terms of machine dependent. Okay, your symbolic languages, they are still machine dependent, but to some extent they are relieved. To some extent they are relieved. As symbolic languages are assembled using assembler into machine language, they are also called assembly languages. Not only symbolic languages, as we are using assemblers in order to convert the symbolic language code into machine language, we also call them as assembler. The second name to symbolic languages is assembly languages. We have two names. One is the symbolic languages and other name is assembly languages. Why we have this special name means because we are using assemblers. As we are using assemblers, we have given this special name to the symbolic language programs. Machine languages are completely dependent on the machine internal hardware. Symbolic languages, to some extent, they are dependent on the machine's hardware or machine's architecture, internal architecture. Now, again, remembering these mnemonics also not suitable, and as symbolic languages, they still dependent on the machine. That means if you are writing a program for one computer, you cannot copy that program into some other computer and run. They still dependent on the machine's architecture. So in order to run the same computer program into some other machine, again you have to write the same program. Okay, so there comes the concept of high level languages. There comes the advent of high level languages. So these you can read the first statement, which gives the drawback of your symbolic languages as well as the machine languages. Symbolic languages require the programmers to concentrate more on the hardware, isn't it? Because when you are writing a symbolic language program for a computer, as it is dependent on that computer's internal hardware, the programmer has to focus on hardware more. Okay, of the computer that they were using, as these languages are still dependent on the machine. Just now I said that I have concluded that statement over there, isn't it? Symbolic languages, they too dependent on the computer architecture. They too dependent, as we said, we are using R1 R2. R1 R2, what are R1 R2 over there? They are the internal register names of your CPU. And if you are using that internal register names in your program, that internal register names may be different in some other computer, may be different in some other computer. So if your programming language is dependent on the computer hardware, you cannot write platform independent programs. So this term you have to understand. Platform independent, in the sense, suppose if you are writing a programming language code in one computer, you can copy that code into some other computer and you can execute that code in some other computer as well. Then only we call such programming language as platform independent programming language. If it fails to satisfy that need, if it fails to satisfy that requirement, we call that programming language as machine dependent or platform dependent programming language. And your machine language is a platform dependent programming language, as well as this assembly language or symbolic language. This is also platform dependent programming language. So there is a need for platform independent programming language. Why means, as you know, in internet we are connecting multiple computers and we are copying the content from one machine to another machine, and we are executing the content from one machine to another machine. Okay, just think about the concept of Google website. Under what language they are writing the code for Google website, isn't it? So whatever language they are writing, it is machine independent. That is the reason why we are downloading the Google website inside our computer and we are seeing the Google page inside our mobile phones, and we are seeing the Google page. Okay, we can run the Google website in many different applications, isn't it? Many different applications, and wherever you run, under what operating system, under what computer architecture you run, you will get that Google page, isn't it? So the reason, the concept is very simple. Whatever programming language they are using in order to frame that Google website, it is machine independent, it is platform independent. That is the reason why we can download that Google page in different platforms, in different computer architectures, and we can get the website, isn't it? We can see the website. Okay, so read the second point over here. Writing program in symbolic languages is very difficult because each instruction has to be coded separately. Okay, so because of these issues, programmer thought that there is a requirement of sophisticated and efficient programming technique. Again, depending on the computer hardware is not the sophisticated way, not the easiest way. We need to have a platform, we need to have a programming language which should be sophisticated, where the programmer, when he is writing the instructions, he should write with complete focus on the programming instructions only. He should not bother about the computer hardware where he is going to run that program. Okay, suppose write once, execute many times. That is our motto over here. Write once, execute many times. So if you write a programming language in machine language, if you write a program in machine language, again, it write once, execute once only. You can execute that program only in that concerned computer only. You cannot copy that program into some other computer and execute. Okay. This led to the development of high level programming language. Basically, the, the core requirement of developing this high level language is that, yeah, write once, execute anywhere, to make your programming language platform independent. To make your programming language platform independent. If you read the last statement, you will understand that one. High level languages are machine independent, are portable. What do you mean by portability? You can easily carry portable tape recorder, portable TV set, portable television, means you can easily carry from one location to other location. So if your programming language do support such a feature, we call it as portability. Portable programming language or machine independent programming language. They allow the programmer to concentrate more on the application rather than the computer hardware where they are going to run this application. So if platform independent concept is not there, let us assume, then the developers of Google website, what they have to do? They have to write a different program for each and every computer available in the entire world, isn't it? They have to write a separate website for each and every computer available inside the world. So to overcome that problem, we got high level programming languages. They are machine independent. They are machine independent. Machine languages, they are machine dependent. Symbolic languages also machine dependent, and to some extent the burden of converting your instructions into binary code, that burden has been reduced in symbolic languages. But again, symbolic languages also system dependent or platform dependent. Okay, then with the advent of this high level programming languages, the concept of machine independentness came into existence, and it was and it is a reality right now, isn't it? So yeah, these now the programmers, as they are free from that mnemonics as well as symbols as well. Okay, because these symbolic languages, they need special symbols to remember and the computer hardware to remember. Register names we have to remember. That kind of thing got rid nowadays. I mean, inside these high level programming languages, that extra burden is being reduced from the programmers. Remembering the hardware components stuff is being reduced from the programmers. So the process of, yeah, again, these high level programming languages, as you know, your computer will not understand. Your computer will understand only machine language. So there is a need to convert these high level programming languages into machine language. Then who will do that job for us, in the sense, for the programmers, in the sense, a program, a special type of program called compiler. Okay, we have a program called compiler, and whatever process we are initiating in order to convert the high level language program into machine level language, we call that process as compilation. Okay, so here you can read the process of converting, the third statement, basically the process of converting high level languages into machine language is known as compilation. And then who will do this compilation job? Means the compiler. So many times we are going to use this term compilation as well as the compiler. So compiler, basically what it will do, it will convert the high level language instructions into machine level language. It's a translator program. What this compiler means, it is a program only. It is a computer program, and as it is doing the translation job, we call it as translator program. You remember this one. What it is a translator program. Compiler is a translator program which do the compilation in order to convert the high level language into machine level language. Hopefully you understood. So the most widely used high level languages, so here we have Fortran, 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 and who created this means John Backus. Okay, his name is John Backus, and with collaborated with IBM team. How he has done the development of this Fortran? John Backus collaborated with IBM team in the year 1957. He developed this language, this high-level language. Okay, who developed? John Backus. In the year 1957, in collaboration with IBM team, he developed a high-level language with name Fortran. Okay, still this Fortran language, it is still under usage in scientific and engineering applications, not in MNCs or something, but in scientific and what we call engineering applications. Many times this Fortran is used. Okay, Fortran, it is a programming language. Okay, okay, we also have COBOL. Okay, we also have COBOL, which was developed by, again, Admiral Grace Hopper. She's a lady, a mathematician, isn't it? Admiral Grace Hopper, she developed it, and the language name, it's a high level language, and the language name is COBOL. Okay, COBOL. So we have two, just now we studied about two languages. One is Fortran, developed by John Backus in collaboration with what we call IBM team in the year 1957. And we also have COBOL programming language. It is also an high-level programming language and developed by Admiral Grace Hopper. Once again, she's a lady mathematician. Then we also have C language. As you can see here, the last point, we also have C language. And who developed this C language in the sense? Yeah, it is an important question. Dennis Ritchie. Dennis Ritchie in the year 1972. In the year 1972, and we study about the history of C programming. There we go into detail, okay, about this C language history. C language, we consider this C language as a high level programming language, okay, and when it is being developed in the sense in the year 1972, by whom? In the sense, Dennis Ritchie. Okay, Dennis Ritchie. So this you remember. Fortran, developed by John Backus in the year 1957 by IBM, John Backus and IBM team in collaboration with IBM team. Then we have COBOL, developed by Admiral Grace Hopper. Then we have C programming language. It is developed by Dennis Ritchie in the year 1972. So this is an example program, a high level program. Basically it is a C program, we can say. In order to multiply two numbers, we write this particular program. I am not going into detail. You just see how easy it is. Okay, compared to machine language, compared to symbolic language, it is very easy to understand, as it is a high level programming language. And moreover, we also got the flexibility of portability, isn't it? We also got portability. That means writing this program only once, you can simply copy this program into number of computers and you can execute this program to see the output. Okay, what each and every statement will do, will learn slowly. Okay, will learn slowly. So just I'm demonstrating this program to you. So what this program will do means, yeah, it will add, it will multiply two numbers. It will multiply two numbers. So again, it is getting late. So what I will do, I will conclude this session here itself. So in our next session, we'll be discussing how we can create, how we can compile, and how we can execute our C programs. Okay, so that is nothing but creating and running the programs. Creating and running the programs. Okay, so in today's class, I'm quickly concluding computer languages. There is a need of computer language because we have to express our feelings to the computer, and easily we can't do it, or directly we can't do it, because the computer will understand only machine language and the human beings will understand natural language. So there is a need to convert the natural language instructions into machine language. So the translator programs, to some extent they are doing, but directly we don't have any translator program which will convert from natural language into machine language. So the scientists or the developers, they developed a translator program which they can convert from intermediary languages, not from the machine language but intermediary languages. Those intermediary languages, they can be they can be symbolic languages, or they can be high level programming languages. Okay, So the translator programs, they can be assemblers, they can be compilers. Okay, if you are writing program in symbolic language, we are using assemblers in order to convert into machine language. If you are writing the program in high level language, we are using compilers to convert into high level programming language. You have to remember all these things. Yeah, many 2 marks SAQs we discussed in today's class. The assembler, the definition of assembler, it is an 2 marks SAQ. Compiler, the definition of compiler, it is a 2 marks SAQ. The difference between assembler and compiler, it is a 2 marks question. And many different points: who developed C language, when developed, where developed, and that examples of symbolic language, examples of high level languages. All those things are very, very important questions. Hope you will answer the questionnaire what I'm going to ask along with this video, and you perform well, because at some point we are going to scrutinize all these marks in awarding your final marks. Okay, hopefully you understand the importance of these questionnaires, these online classes. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, students.